Hey, what's up and welcome to Game Positive. Will the new game releases from Bethesda Softworks be exclusive to PC and Xbox? This is a question that has been debated a lot over the last few weeks, and I know I'm very late to the party in terms of making a video on this subject, but I have been wanting to do it for quite a long time. I kind of mentioned what I think is going to happen in terms of exclusivity in my an older podcast episode as well as my most recent YouTube video, but I never really explained why I think that way or kind of gave any explanation as to what made me come to that conclusion. Until now, I actually just recorded the most recent episode of the podcast, and I kind of went into a lot more detail over there. And if you'd like, you can check out the full podcast on any major podcast services, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you normally listen to podcasts. I'll also be uploading that entire episode to YouTube. If you wanted to listen to it with some B-roll in the background, feel free to do it that way as well. But I thought it was kind of an important enough kind of piece to kind of cut it out of the podcast and make it its own video, which is what I'm doing here. It's only about 12 minutes long, and it's a lot easier to kind of digest in this format instead of having it be part of the entire podcast as a whole. So I thought that made sense. But before I kind of flip over to that video, I just want to say that everything that I'm going to talk about in the next 12 minutes is just 100% my opinion. It's not backed up by literally any facts because we don't have any facts. The only people that really know what's going to happen are the people at Microsoft and the people at Bethesda. And honestly, they have really no incentive to say what's going to happen one way or another until we get closer to the launch of these games. I mean, it doesn't make sense for Microsoft to get any kind of negative publicity by saying that PlayStation players aren't going to be able to play these games. And it doesn't really give them any benefit to say that either. So it makes no sense for them to come out and say it. I think everything that they've said so far makes the most sense from a PR perspective. So it leaves us here to kind of speculate. But anyway, without further ado, let's just jump right into the clip and then I'll come back at the end here. Which is kind of going back to the last episode where I talked about the Bethesda acquisition and how it relates to exclusivity. In the last episode, I gave my thoughts, obviously, around the acquisition of ZeniMax Media Group and how it relates to exclusivity with Xbox. I mentioned that I believe all current game as a service titles will remain as is. So stuff like Elder Scrolls Online and Fallout 76. I don't think that Microsoft's going to just take the game away from the people that already play that on PlayStation or other places. But I did say that any new IPs or new releases that are going to be coming from ZeniMax will be exclusive. There's a couple people that mentioned that I just kind of said this and didn't really explain why I feel this way. So I wanted to take time in this episode to kind of dive deeper into that and kind of give my reasoning why I think those are going to be exclusive. First off, I just want to briefly mention that this is kind of just what I think will happen from a business perspective, based on what I envision the thought process is over at Redmond, where Xbox is heading and everything that the leadership has kind of said up until now and over the last few years. It's not necessarily what I want to happen. I know there's a lot of contention surrounding this subject from all over the console wars. I'm not trying to feed into that. My personal not opinion, but my personal kind of wish is that I wish there was a way where everybody could play the games that they love. I don't like the idea of someone who has put hundreds of hours into Oblivion on PlayStation and then stood in line at midnight to get Skyrim and played everything 100% of that game and then got it again on PlayStation 4 with the special edition and played that and is super invested into Elder Scrolls, has a clan for ESO on PlayStation and just that's their favorite series, and then all of a sudden they can't play that on their platform of choice anymore. I don't really like that. I kind of wish there was a way where everybody could just play what they wanted to, they could where they used to play it, nothing would change. But I don't think that is really makes any sense for Microsoft to do, and I'll explain why. So the main reason why, and pretty much the only reason why, is Game Pass. So Microsoft is all in on Game Pass. if you think about like how insane it is that you get all of those games for such a low monthly price, especially all of the brand new like Microsoft exclusive games on day one, like Halo, Gears, Forza, Flight Sim, like all of those like big budget games that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to develop, you get them all for $10 a month or $15 a month with Ultimate. It basically evaporates all of the retail sales that they would generally get for that game. If you think about stuff like, I don't know, like Halo 3 or Halo 2, for example, when Halo 2 came out, it literally broke all records for entertainment sales, like how much money that generated from selling copies of that game within the first, I believe, like 24 hours, or I can't remember the exact figures, but it was record breaking, and Halo 3 broke that record. And then other games have come out for other platforms and whatnot, and it broke sales records time over time. There's a lot of money, obviously, to be made in selling games to people, and there's going to be a lot of people that have PlayStations, so all of those sales are going to be gone, basically, right? And then you have to factor in like all of the money that they're paying for you to get those games at that insane monthly price, right? The actual numbers for like what it costs for each game on Game Pass isn't released. Like that's kind of a private kind of transaction between Microsoft and the publisher. But essentially, like how those games end up on Game Pass is Microsoft will meet with the publishers of that game. Let's just what's a game that came to Game Pass recently? Let's say Red Dead 2, right? So Red Dead 2, obviously when it came out, it was like probably the biggest game. It probably honestly was the biggest game in terms of like overall sales for one disc this generation outside of Grand Theft Auto, which is another game that was on Game Pass. So how that would work, like how that would end up on Game Pass, is Microsoft would basically meet with Rockstar or like 2K or Take-Two, sorry, the publisher, and they would basically say like, we want Red Dead to be on our service for, let's say, I don't know, 12 months, right? Then Take-Two is going to do some type of math where they're going to kind of make a figure of how much they would have expected to make in terms of like retail sales for that game over that period of time. And then they would kind of negotiate a figure of what lump sum Microsoft would have to pay them for that game to go on that service, right? And then Microsoft has to pay them for all of those months up front, and then the game's available on Game Pass, etc. So with games like first-party games that are there forever, like Halo Infinite, when that comes out, that game's going to be on Game Pass forever. All of the money they spent to develop that, they're not going to get a single cent from retail. Any game that launches day one on Game Pass, that cost for licensing that game for the service is going to be as high as it possibly can be, because obviously the projected sales for a game goes down significantly after you remove like the initial launch of it. So long story short, is Microsoft is paying tons and tons and tons and tons of money to have this huge library of games on Game Pass. And they paid tons and tons and tons and tons of money to acquire Bethesda to put those games on Game Pass, because they know that the number one way to like get growth within Game Pass is content. And they're not going to spend $7.5 billion to inject Game Pass with all of this content only to give like end users another route that they can take to play those games on a device that doesn't have access to Game Pass. I believe that Game Pass subscribers and the growth of Game Pass is the only KPI that Microsoft cares about going forward. KPI is key performance indicator. I'm not trying to sound smart or anything. It's just something I hear over and over again. That's probably the extent of my business knowledge, is knowing what those three letters stand for. So definitely not trying to flex or anything. I'm still pretty dumb. Anyway, that's going to be the only thing that they care about going forward. They're not really going to be super concerned about losing like a few $1 million on like Elder Scrolls PS4 sales, because for every time that game sells, they have to pay Sony 30%. Anytime that sells at retail, they have to pay the retailer a certain amount and then pay Sony some more as well. So like they're not super concerned about the millions and millions of dollars they'll lose there. They're more concerned about the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars that they could potentially lose if they take subscribers away from Game Pass, or give subscribers an avenue to play the games that they're paying for to develop outside on a device, that doesn't have access to Game Pass. The reason why I think those games will be on Steam is because to play a game on Steam, you need to have a computer, and the computer has access to Game Pass. So they're hoping that people will see the price tag of Elder Scrolls, the new Elder Scrolls, whatever they're going to call it, and then see that it's also available on Game Pass, and then make the financial decision to play it over on Game Pass, subscribe there, and then they can play other games on Steam if they want to. They're hoping that players will make that choice. But if that game was on PlayStation, then they can't make that choice because Game Pass is not on PlayStation. I think that Game Pass is so built into the DNA of Xbox right now. They spent so much money on it that anything that could possibly halter growth, they just won't do. They can't slow down on Game Pass. They can't make the library worse. They can't backpedal on Game Pass at all, because any sign of Game Pass getting weaker or any kind of pullback on Game Pass at all, it just will kill Xbox, because it's just it's the main selling point of Xbox. It's the main focal point of all their marketing. It's way more entrenched into Xbox than Kinect ever was. They could have easily removed Kinect because A, people didn't like it, and B, it wasn't as core to the gaming, to their brand as Game Pass is. So Game Pass is not something that they can lower or pull back on or get rid of. It's something that has to stay, and its success and growth is going to be parallel to Xbox's success and growth, and Microsoft gaming as a whole success and growth. So I don't think that they would ever do anything that could potentially make somebody make the decision to not subscribe to Game Pass. And I think releasing those games on PlayStation or Nintendo would do that. So that's kind of my long-winded explanation. In summary, again, I think the only performance indicator for Microsoft in this generation is Game Pass. I think releasing games on any device that has no way to access Game Pass could potentially prevent a new subscriber from subscribing. So that's something that they won't do. They're basically, that's their main metric for success is Game Pass. And that's kind of why I don't think those games would be exclusive, even though I kind of wish they were, because I don't like the idea. I have friends that are huge Elder Scrolls fans. They have tattoos of the Skyrim symbol on their bodies. They've played thousands of hours, and all of those hours were played on PlayStation, and they have other ties to that console as well. They're big fans of Uncharted, they're big fans of Bloodborne, they're big fans of God of War. They're basically very entrenched into that console, right? So Skyrim or the next Elder Scrolls alone is probably not enough to make them go out and spend $600 on a new console. So it might just be something that they can't play. And they don't have PCs either. So it does suck for them. However, I will say that if any company was going to do this, I think it's the best that Microsoft did, because they are not only going to make it available on the Series X console, right? So you do have other ways to do that. I know I just talked about someone who only has a PlayStation, but technically, although it's definitely not ideal, they could play it through xCloud on their phone. They can even connect a PlayStation controller to their phone to do that. There's a lot of rumors that say that xCloud is going to come to iOS as well as come to web browsers. So even if you have a crummy laptop or a non-gaming computer, you may still be able to stream the new Elder Scrolls or Fallout games to that device. So you're not completely optionless. There is still ways that you can experience those games. So if it was going to be ripped away from PlayStation, I think that the best case scenario is that Microsoft did it, because you have all these different ways to play. It would be significantly worse if I don't know, Google or Amazon purchased Bethesda, because then you're just out of options. Also, the Series S is going to be, at launch, it's pretty affordable, but I would imagine in a couple of years, which is probably when the new Elder Scrolls is going to come out, it's going to be even more affordable. So if you were able to get a secondary console that's kind of a more budget-friendly option to go with your PlayStation 5, that's also an option too if you want to have the console experience. So there is other avenues that you can go, but I don't think playing those games on PlayStation is going to be one of them. And there you have it. I hope that clears up why I think those games will be exclusive to Xbox and PC. Hopefully everything I said made sense. I would love to know your opinions, though, whether you think I'm on the right track, right train of thought, or if what I'm saying doesn't make any sense at all, which is entirely possible as well. Either way, I would love to have a discussion about it in the comments below. If you made it to the end of the video, I really want to say thank you for watching. If you would consider subscribing, that would really mean a lot to me. I have a bunch of content coming down the pipe leading up to the launch of next gen, and I would love it if you stuck around to check some of it out. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Remember to have fun out there, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.